Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. My name is Craig Piercy, and I'm the Executive Director, CEO of ANS, and it is my pleasure to welcome you to today's event. I'm going to turn the proverbial microphone over to Ojeda, the chair of our ANS Student Conference 2020 and the chair of our organizing committee in a moment. But before I do, I just want to extend best wishes from the nuclear professional community to you and your family during these strange times. We hope you're healthy, well-stocked, and gainfully occupied. ANS has entered into remote operations at this time, but we are open for business and working hard to deliver on our commitment to stronger science, better service, and a louder voice. To that end, during the current COVID-19 lockdown, we are going to be bringing you enhanced web-based content over the next couple of weeks. It started Wednesday when we had 1,100 of our members and guests join us for a briefing on microreactors hosted by the Young Members Group, and we will continue with content in the coming weeks, including a virtual tour of America's national laboratories, also sponsored by YMG, and a lot more yet to be announced. So I think, as everyone knows, we've had to postpone the ANS 2020 Student Conference in Raleigh, North Carolina. So we decided it would be a good idea to sort of pick the croutons off the salad, so to speak, and give you some of the highlighted content we had for the Raleigh meeting while everybody's cooped up in their homes and offices. So let me now turn to Ojeda, who will tell you a little bit more about today's and upcoming events and introduce our special guests. Ishi?
Thank you, Craig. Welcome, and thank you all for joining us today. My name is Rita Baranwal. I am a PhD candidate at the NC State University and the ANS Student Conference Organizing Committee Chair. So as you know, that in light of the recent coronavirus pandemic, the ANS 2020 Student Conference has been postponed to April of 2021. However, I'd like to thank our organizing committee for all of their hard work in planning what would have been a spectacular conference with over 180 paper submissions with 60 posters, variety of panels, and fully booked workshops and tours. So yes, we are very disappointed. However, the safety of all who would have attended is paramount. With that in mind, and quick thinking and planning by ANS headquarters staff members and myself, today we bring you this new initiative, which is a 3-part ANS student webinar series. We start with today's plenary by Dr. Rita Baranwal, followed by a panel discussion next Friday on April 3rd on nuclear economics, and then culminating with a senior design competition on April 10th, giving this year's graduating students a time-honored platform to present their work, albeit the different format. So for today's webinar, it is my pleasure to introduce our plenary speaker, Dr. Rita Baranwal, who serves as the Assistant Secretary for the Office of Nuclear Energy in the U.S. Department of Energy. As one of the confirmed keynotes for the 2020 ANS Student Conference, it is quite fitting that Dr. Rita Baranwal kicks off the series today. Prior to her current role, Dr. Baranwal directed the Gateway for Accelerated Innovations in Nuclear Initiative at Idaho National Lab. She was responsible for providing the nuclear industry and other stakeholders access to DOE's state-of-art R&D expertise, capabilities, and infrastructure to achieve faster and cost-effective development, demonstration, and ultimate deployment of innovative nuclear energy technologies. Under her leadership, GAIN positively impacted over 120 companies. Before joining the U.S. Department of Energy, Dr. Baranwal served as Director of Technology Development and Application at Westinghouse. She has also served on various advisory boards, including MIT's Material Research Lab and UC Berkeley's Nuclear Engineering Department. Dr. Baranwal holds a bachelor's degree in material science from MIT and a PhD in the same from University of Michigan. With that, please welcome me in joining Dr. Baranwal, our plenary speaker for the 2020 ANS Student Webinar Series. Thank you, and I will now hand it off to her.
Thank you, Ishita, for that introduction, and thank you, Craig and ANS, for ensuring, along with Ishita and her team, that the show goes on during this otherwise uncertain time. So I very much appreciate us being able to still conduct this using the technology that we have available. And on a side note, this webinar forced me to change out of my daytime pajamas, so I do appreciate that opportunity as well. Thank all of you for attending. At this moment, I see over 257 participants, so this is fantastic. I really, really appreciate this, and I'm looking forward to the Q&A session here, so please actively participate. I'll go over a few remarks, but as I mentioned, I am looking forward to having a chat with all of you. So since being confirmed in this job of July last year, I've had the opportunity to travel around the US and the world and see several of you, meet a lot of diverse people from a lot of diverse walks of life. And I've been hearing about their needs and their challenges. And these types of experiences, including what we're doing now at this ANS student conference, is reinforcing why I agreed to take this job. I really do believe firmly in my heart that nuclear technology can solve many of our most challenging problems across the nation and the globe. And as I sit here delivering this message to you today, this resonates even more strongly as we sit through the pandemic and we actually get to enjoy the electricity and the benefits that nuclear energy provides. There's a lot of activity going on across the national labs and the universities that some of you very well may be participating in with respect to looking at modeling and simulation of COVID-19, looking at irradiation options for and sterilizing personal protective equipment via irradiation, gamma radiation, and E-beam irradiation. And so those are some of the activities that are being highlighted right now that are occurring in our industry. So I hope that all of you take pride in being a part of this industry and hopefully coming out of this pandemic with new solutions that our folks helped to create. Nuclear energy, we know, is revolutionary to just beyond electricity generation. We certainly provide low emission energy for water desalination. This will help to achieve worldwide water security, which also is a major crisis at the moment worldwide. We are also working to decarbonize the industrial sector with process heat. We're looking to decarbonize the transportation sector with hydrogen and electrification. So recently we awarded a $9.2 million industry funding opportunity announcement for a pilot program at Davis-Besse plant in Ohio, where they're going to generate hydrogen from their power plant via electrolysis and use that hydrogen to power their bus fleet in Toledo. And actually they just came online again this morning after a refueling outage. And so that's also very good news to hear, especially during this pandemic. It's another good message that we can continue to propagate on social media that our plants, due to their very, very stringent emergency preparedness plans, are equipped and have always been equipped to handle situations on the off chance that something like this does occur. Our nuclear power plants are very well equipped to handle this, and this is what we're going through at the moment. And then finally, nuclear energy certainly can help the betterment of mankind, humankind, by way of medical applications and also space exploration. Advanced nuclear reactors have the potential to solve diverse challenges across our country as well as across the globe. Many of the countries that I've had the privilege of visiting recently do see nuclear energy as a means to meeting their energy goals, their clean energy goals, both with their demand and their growth, and to provide energy diversity and security, just as we do here in the United States. So here at DOE, we are focusing our priorities in NE around 4 different things. The first and foremost is to sustain the existing fleet with new research and development innovations so that they can operate more efficiently and more cost effectively. We're also trying to get advanced reactor technologies over the finish line. This is certainly a top priority of mine. We are establishing and maintaining critical fuel cycle infrastructure, and we are also working to enhance the United States' global competitiveness. Working together, we can realize the enormous potential of nuclear energy. I do believe that the United States has the most innovative technology offerings in the advanced reactor technology space. We're developing a diverse catalog of technology options, from micro reactors for small grids, remote or islanded communities, to SMRs, small modular reactors, to large reactors to meet large baseload generation needs. So in essence, we have the right reactor for any application. But making advanced reactors a reality is more than just one and done. We have to have an infrastructure that supports continuous innovation over decades to come. So let me talk a little bit about the versatile test reactor that we're working on here in the United States, VTR. We need an advanced high energy neutron source to perform accelerated testing of fuels and materials to develop these advanced nuclear technologies that I mentioned. VTR is a crucial part and is complementary to our world-class infrastructure, and it will continue to provide innovation over the decades to come. And so I look forward to having several of you hopefully participate in that type of activity, development of VTR, testing at VTR, once you join our workforce. Infrastructure, speaking of workforce, also includes having a talented workforce. Nuclear technology certainly can have a broad impact on our communities and lives, but we need to develop, expand, and enhance opportunities for our kindergarten through 12th grade youth, especially in the area of STEM, science, technology, engineering, and math. So this type of work that we do here in the nuclear industry requires a highly educated workforce. A new jobs report came out this week by the National Association of State Energy Officials and the Energy Futures Initiative. And they reported that the US nuclear industry employed more than 70,000 people in 2019. It also cited that there were difficulties in hiring engineers and scientists because those jobs require very specific qualifications. So I think this is it's a very salient message for all of you that are still in school, that there are many opportunities out there in this industry. And so I look forward to having you join our workforce, because the utility sector and the rest of the industry very much need talented scientists and engineers to join our ranks. And I would say nuclear engineering, of course, is one of those facets, but there are many, many other engineering disciplines and sciences, as well as other disciplines that need to be part of our workforce to ensure that we continue to prosper. Last year within DOE, we funded STEM education totaling $113 million, with $26 million of that earmarked for STEM programs focused on recruiting minority and underserved student populations. The Nuclear Energy University program has awarded over $560 million since 2009 to over 120 colleges to complete essential research and help train our future workforce, all of you, while our integrated university program has awarded 800 nuclear energy related student scholarships and fellowships totaling $44 million. We also have a concerted effort afoot that engages the earliest stages of the workforce pipeline, as I mentioned, the K through 12 students. And if you have not yet taken the virtual field trip to Idaho National Lab, I encourage you to do so as soon as we end this webinar. Navigating Nuclear, thanks to American Nuclear Society and Discovery Education, have put together this very exciting field trip to Idaho National Lab. I worked there for 3 years, and through this field trip, I got to see things that I had never been exposed to while I was there. So it's a really, really great piece of work. I encourage you to take a look at it. STEM education is especially important in our underrepresented populations, and this certainly is a focus of the US government at large, and it's also a focus of my office here at the Office of Nuclear Energy. The research and development activities supported by the department collaterally provide training and workforce development that is aimed to ensure future expertise in these very important fields. Nuclear energy is certainly a partnership to us, from providing support in developing a country's nuclear program to assistance with decommissioning. The US and its industry will be there. We do not view this as a transactional, singular relationship, but a sustained partnership for the next century. But our innovative technology and technical expertise isn't enough to compete with other countries that can provide comprehensive build, own, and operate packages with attractive financing and fuel take-back options. And this is where we need to make progress. We need to be able to compete with these comprehensive packages. So finally, having a fully operational Ex-Im bank will certainly contribute to us being able to compete in this space, as well making other financing mechanisms available for the nuclear sector, including the potential of the U.S. Development Finance Corporation and also private financing. Providing comprehensive fuel management solutions can also help in this space. So it's an exciting time, and working together, we can further advance nuclear energy. I very much appreciate you all having me, and more importantly, I thank you for choosing to enter this exciting field. I very much look forward to working with all of you. And when I was in graduate school, I actually had the opportunity to see B.B. King perform. And for those who don't know who he was a famous jazz musician with a famous guitar named Lucille. And I'll end my talk with a quote from him, and that is, "Education is the most powerful weapon you can use to change the world." So thank you very much for your attention. I look forward to your questions.
That's great. Thanks, Rita. Really appreciate the comments. We do have the questions coming in here, and so I'm going to go to Q&A here.
Okay.
First question is one regarding used nuclear fuel and the fuel cycle. And I think, you know, Rita, you've talked a lot a number of times in the last 6 months about the importance of looking at advanced fuel cycles as being part of our solution. So, you know, can you just kind of give us your current thoughts on you know, recycling? How does it fit, and you know, how does it fit with advanced reactor systems in development? And you know, I think there was also some interest in the status of pyro processing as well. So can you speak to that issue?
Sure. So let me talk to you about what my team has been doing. They've pulled together, first and foremost, making sure that we understand where we are with respect to statutory and legislation. Is there a reason that we cannot recycle in the United States? And the answer to that is no. In terms of the law and when what's on the books, we certainly can recycle in the United States. It's just a stance that we have had over the past several years to not do that. So that was action number one. Two, we're looking at how other countries do it. So I did have the opportunity to tour the Le Hague facility in France, and got to see how they handle recycling of used commercial fuel. And so started to get familiar with what the process actually is before we start to fully, you know, go full bore, or for full speed ahead, if you will, into this space. And really what's motivating me to look at these options is a couple things. And there's one that has popped up recently. So for those that don't know, I've spent my entire career in nuclear fuel. I started out as developing advanced fuel for the nuclear Navy, then went on to work at Westinghouse, where I continued to work in nuclear fuel. So this is it's a topic that's really near and dear to my heart. I am befuddled by why we use something 5% and then choose to call it waste. I'll let you know that in my time over the past couple of weeks of self-isolation and social distancing, one of my major achievements has been to clean out my inbox. I had over 5,000 unorganized emails, and now I'm down to 12. So I'm in really good shape. But the reason I'm sharing this with you is that I have a file for what is what we're talking about for used fuel. I don't have a waste folder. I have a used fuel folder. And so in my mind, I don't even call it waste. And my team has started to learn that I don't like that word unless it truly is waste. And so used fuel is something that we can start to recycle, as you've mentioned, Craig. And we're looking at that. Now, if we don't build a recycling plant in the United States, that's okay. There are other entities that certainly can do this for us. But over the recent weeks, we know that the president has said that we need to look at other options to Yucca Mountain. And if I go back to my commercial global competitiveness priority, if I want to offer a build, own, operate, fuel take back option, I need to have something to do with that fuel when I take it back. And if I can't store it in a place like Yucca Mountain, I need to be able to do something with it. And that is one of the motivators for looking at recycling.
Great, thanks, Rita. I like the idea of let's not call it waste unless it really is waste, because it is, most of it is a resource in some way. We just haven't figured out a good way to exploit that resource. So, like that. Okay, so next question, very well formed, so I'm just going to read it as it is. There seems to be broad bipartisan support for the development of small modular reactor technologies in the United States. Do you see a clear path to commercialization for these technologies, and what role will your office play in this multi-year process?
So we have been gifted by Congress this year funding to demonstrate 2 advanced reactor technologies. And so our office will play a very substantial role in the demonstration of small modular reactor or advanced reactor technologies. Now remember, small is just a size. And so it could be light water reactor technology, it could be molten salt, it could be high temperature reactor technology or fast reactor technology. Any of those could be considered small. They could also be considered micros. But our office will have a very, very important role to play in assisting developers commercialize their technology. And so I'm looking forward to the deployment of our program. It's called the Advanced Reactor Demo Program. And we are just about ready to issue a request for proposals. Some companies have participated and provided us information on what they want that proposal to look like. And we will be issuing that in the days to come. Great,
thank you. Okay, a couple of questions on the VTR. And specifically, can you talk a little bit more about what the VTR technology looks like, and then a specific question about the critical decision 1 or CD1 for the VTR program, scheduled for Q1 of FY21. Is that what we still expect?
So I'll answer that last question first. Yes, we are still on track for CD1, and VTR at the moment is being based, the technology is being based off of the GE Prism sodium cooled reactor design. And so they have down selected the technology. They are in the midst of also down selecting the location of where the VTR would be sited.
Great, thank you. All right, so I'm gonna, while I continue to sort of read and synthesize the question, I'm gonna use moderator's prerogative here to ask you a more general question, which is, I looked it up this morning. You were officially sworn into your position on July 11th, 2019. So it's been a little over 8 months now. Can you just, aside from the technology, can you talk about some of the things that surprised you most or you weren't expecting, and how do you look at the job differently today than you did 8.5 months ago?
The thing that surprises me the most is how important and powerful this role is and the voice of this role. We bring to conversations where legislation is being determined, where executive orders are being issued. We bring the voice of this sector. And if this role weren't participating, it would be left up to other folks that aren't experts in this field. And so I'm not begrudging them that, but they just don't know the nuances of what our technology can offer and what we bring. And so to literally be at that table and be in those meetings has been so profoundly impressive upon me. And I had no appreciation for that before I got into this role. So I think that's been the most impactful. I am an engineer through and through, and so it certainly, very frankly, has been frustrating at times, just the true politics of working in this role, but it is completely overcome. The politics are overcome by the impact that this role has, and so I think that's really been the most surprising.
Okay, so a question. I'm going to try to synthesize a couple of questions together here, but it really relates to the workforce, and specifically what's being done to take advantage of the existing workforce as we move forward, right? So we have these plans for advanced reactors. The hope is we're going to see a rebirth and a growth in the next few years. But and so we need nuclear engineers, nuclear scientists, but other jobs in construction, procurement, supply chain, fire protection, so forth. How does the department and the office, how are you looking at those sort of workforce supply chain development programs? What are your plans and initiatives there?
So we do a lot of outreach, like as I mentioned, in K through 12, but we've been focusing lately on middle school and high school activities as well, mainly to educate students that this is a sector that they could choose to enter. And you don't have to necessarily go to college to be part of us, right? To be part of this sector. And what we're also finding out is that the craft trades is really one area where we need a lot more individuals trained up. We need more welders. We need more folks like that, because there's a lot of construction that's going to happen. If all of these companies really do get to commercialize their technologies, somebody's got to build them. And so we're trying to communicate that to students that are middle school, high school, that this is could be a lucrative industry for them. And to get a associate's degree and beyond is certainly a possibility as well. And so that type of outreach is happening. We were participating very heavily. There was a STEM and engineering festival that was going to occur in less than a month from now, where we expected over 10,000 students to come with their teachers and parents. And so those are the types of venues that we are making sure we engage into. Really, it's to inform folks that we're here and we want them to join our ranks. One of the conferences, I know that there's been many conferences that have been canceled over the past few weeks, but one of the conferences that was canceled that I was really looking forward to participate in was South by Southwest. They have an EDU section. And our panel made the cut to be part of that venue. And we were going to be able to talk to educators about why we do what we do. And so those types of venues, reaching the non-traditional audiences, I think is also very important to ensure that we start to beef up our talent pipeline.
So I'm going to go and again try to synthesize a couple of questions together, but it involves university programs, NEUP, and so forth. So obviously, the NEUP program has been in place for a little over 10 years now, and has sort of consistently provided universities with and the research enterprise with funding to do research, scholarships, fellowships, and so forth. A couple of questions just kind of about the status of programs for this year. Obviously, there was a little bit of a blip in funding last year, and it seems like everything is back to normal, but can you comment on that? And then I do want to just add one other question on the back end, which is from a student, and I'm trying to pick out the ones from the students here, that if you are interested in nuclear research, but you aren't necessarily at a university that has a strong nuclear focus, how can you get involved?
Okay. First question first. NEUP, the way you described it was perfect. There was a blip in the amount of funding that was provided to the program. While I am in this role, I am certainly committed to continue to fund the program at the levels that folks have been accustomed to, and that's typically been about up to 20% of our budget, and so that needs to continue. I really do believe that we need to have students, both undergraduate and graduate, participate in the research that NEUP does fund. For a couple of reasons. One, it's important to the industry, but I think it also gives students the opportunity to realize either hey, yes, this is a field I want to go into. Or, you know what, it's not for me, and that's okay too. But I hope it's the first one where this is really neat stuff, and this is where I want to spend a big part of my career. So it's really important for us to continue to fund that type of effort. So I'm committed to continuing funding NEAB at the levels that they have, the universities have and programs have been accustomed to spending. The second question was if I'm at a university that doesn't have as strong of a nuclear program or any. There are many other opportunities, and I encourage you to work with our office if you cannot locate those opportunities. NE Communications is, let me actually look up the email real quick before I give you incorrect information. 1 second, but there is actually probably all of you can find it faster than I can, but it is, here we go. The email address where if you need more information from us is NE, so that's N as in nuclear, E as in energy, communications, all one word, @nuclear.energy.gov. And so that's where you can contact us for more information. But what I'm envisioning is that students can do summer internships at national laboratories. They can continue to do work at the national laboratories if the work is conducive to do so while they're back at their universities. And then there certainly can be collaborations that are developed with sister universities where there might be a stronger nuclear engineering program as well.
Thank you. Again, a couple of questions. Can you talked a little bit about it in your opening remarks, but we're going through this really strange, unique time with the COVID-19 lockdown and just the impacts on the economy and policy. I want to give you another opportunity here just to maybe think through, how things look different to you now than they might have looked a couple of months ago.
I think the importance of what our industry does, to me, has been highlighted. The fact that we're able to do this, I get a lot of my electricity from Beaver Valley, and so I would not be able to participate in even a webinar like this if our plants weren't operating 24/7. And to be asked if we can lead an effort to sterilize used N95 masks, because we're unfortunately, despite being such a rich country where we've got a shortage of those masks, knowing that our technology could possibly solve that problem, to me is very, very gratifying. And so it's a silver lining to a devastating situation, but I think that it's just given me more fodder for why I'm very fortunate to be in this industry, and I hope all of you, all 283 of us at this moment, would feel the same way. Aside from work, I think I'll share a small personal story with you real quick. It's been very unnerving. There's a lot of anxiety. My kids, I have 2 teenagers, and they've been home since March 13th, supposedly doing remote learning, though doesn't seem to be a lot of time spent on that, but nonetheless, that's okay. But like last night, my daughter pulled out her ukulele and started playing it again. And she hasn't done that for a couple years. And so we're kind of revisiting old pastimes. And so again, another silver lining is that we get to spend time doing things that we hadn't really spent doing before. We've certainly slowed down. There's no sports, there's no, scouts, no school activities. And so there's been a major pause. But again, I'm viewing it as a silver lining. We certainly are all continuing to work. I know that some students are probably still in online classes. And so it is a very uncertain, very unique time, but I am very grateful. Again, let me bring it back to our industry to be able to provide us the comforts that we are used to. The lights are on, our devices work. we're able to get through this situation, hopefully soon.
Yeah, no, it's at the top of my remarks. I sort of wish everybody that they're well provisioned and gainfully occupied, right? It seems like that seems to me to be the secret to life in the COVID lockdown. I'm just glad Home Depot is still open because I've got a few home projects I'm working on. Okay, a couple more questions. So one question related to DoD, and obviously in the webinar that we had on Wednesday with micro reactors, that was one of the topics of conversation. The question is can you speak to DoD and you guys partnering with DoD to work together to create a demand pull for innovation in advanced reactor development?
So within our Office of Nuclear Energy, we do have folks that are experts with respect to microreactor technology, and they are a direct liaison to the DoD. And so we really don't need, and the DoD recognizes this, that we don't need DoD to be developing and maintaining that type of expertise. We're sharing resources, we're sharing best practices, and our folks are on the DoD team, essentially providing input, providing advice. Our developers are the ones that DoD is looking towards deploying this type of technology. And just recently, they finally publicly announced that BWXT, X-Energy, and Westinghouse are the companies that they have chosen to continue forth in this competitive process to develop microreactors to support the Department of Defense. So it's a very collaborative effort, which is not typical between the two organizations necessarily, but again, in the spirit of being innovative and not duplicating efforts and certainly not wanting to duplicate expenses, we are working very well together.
Excellent, thank you. All right, so we had a question about interim, specifically about interim storage. I'm gonna just try to find it here. What powers and what authority does DOE currently believe it has now under federal law, and what authorities would it need to move forward on interim storage? I know you're not promoting anything, hypothetical conversation, but what are the limits of what you can do now?
So the limits of what we can do now is we can explore options, which is what we are doing. As I look at that shovel that is hanging on the back or the side wall behind you, that really explains what we cannot do. We cannot put a shovel in the ground to proceed with interim storage construction, because right now the way it is on the books is that Yucca Mountain, construction on Yucca Mountain needs to, my understanding is that construction on Yucca Mountain would need to proceed before we could break ground on an interim storage facility. So where we are right now is we're exploring options for interim storage. Something like a facility will not materialize overnight. And so it is very prudent for us to start exploring what those options are.
Great. Again, jumping around here a little bit, but trying to get most of at least the categories of questions answered. A question here that are there any programs within DOE to support the non-power applications of nuclear energy? And so we know that within the Office of Science, we have that's coordinating our isotope production functions. You mentioned before a little bit of the discussion about the role of gamma and e-beam sterilization in supporting our healthcare sector. I know that roughly 60% of the single-use medical supplies in this country are irradiated in some form, so it's clearly an important issue. I'm going to try to expand it to a broader question of how you are the Office of Nuclear Energy, but there are many other parts of DOE that work on civilian applications of nuclear technology. How do you work with those offices, and what are you seeing?
So, for example, let's go to the radioisotopes. That is certainly led out of Office of Science, and they do have expertise in that area. If there is a need, we certainly collaborate and cross-pollinate, if you will. We haven't really actively from NE participated in those programs, but even recently, actually, I was invited to go speak at an isotopes conference in Malaysia, and so certainly had to reach out into the isotope program in Office of Science and say, well, please share with me what you are doing and highlight all of the activities that are going on. So there's that. There's also what is not in NE is fusion technology that is also, that resides with Office of Science. But again, there's a lot of overlap where we're talking about materials development, improvements. And so things that we're doing in NE can certainly benefit the fusion application, fusion technologies as well. And I might have a four-legged visitor here in a moment, but nonetheless, there is a lot of overlap. We don't want to be siloed, nor do we want the government spending money redundantly when there is one area that is working on a technology. We can certainly share our results. For example, let's come back to COVID-19. There is a group of folks, one is from Argonne National Lab that is collaborating in pulling together all of the national lab activities with respect to research and development that can help in the COVID-19 scenario. So there is a lot of collaboration that does occur.
Great, thank you. Okay, so there was a recently issued 2020, there we go.
I don't want to interrupt your question, but here was
there we go, I like it. The official, it kind of looked a little like little Cherenkov blue in my picture, right? So maybe radioactive. So another question here about the sort of the workforce and it feeds back to students. I think you mentioned the 2020 Energy and Employment Report that just came out a little while ago, or you may have mentioned that.
Yeah.
We've seen 2,000 nuclear sector jobs eliminated in 2019. How can you speak to some specific opportunities for students is the question, and I think more broadly, what do you tell a student now that may be looking at those numbers and saying, "Oh gosh, what did I do? What's the pep talk for the future?"
So if you read the report, the way I interpreted it was that the reason why they were having trouble getting folks to join on was insufficient qualifications. And so there's certainly specific quals that we need. Let me go back to the crafts and the trade folks. There's a skill set that is needed. And so whether you're a high school grad or you're doing a postdoc, there's certain skill sets that are needed. I think the opportunities for students to go into either the private sector at a utility or a national lab or continue on in academia are very, very exciting. And they're very numerous at the moment. And so I don't know that I would necessarily say I need to give you a pep talk because the numbers went down because we didn't have enough qualified folks in the mix. And so for those that are students on this call, what I would say is stay in school, get whatever degree you're pursuing, and then look forward to working with you.
Very good. Very good. So, all right. Again, jumping around the globe here, the Russians have recently constructed fast breeder reactors, and I believe are constructing at least one of these three in China. What's the status of progress on the development of a regulatory framework? What are your views of how, I guess, translation, what are your views of how fast we're moving on the regulatory front?
I've been really impressed with, I assume we're talking about the NRC because we're talking about the US, but with how flexible and receptive the NRC has been to having discussions with advanced technology developers and willing to look at licensing modernization. It's been a bit of chicken and egg over the past several years because they didn't have substantial amount of designs to review. And so you can't staff up and have folks kind of twiddle their thumbs waiting for a design to come in. But that's changing. And they have commissioned training for the NRC has commissioned training for their staff in the various technologies. So the staff has become educated and well-versed in what is going to be coming across their desks for review. And it's been a very collaborative effort, if I can use that word, because I think the impression was before, we'll get our design, we'll hand it to the NRC, and then we'll wait quietly for, questions to come over back to us. What's different is if we have the developers engaged in conversation with the regulators along the way, I envision that many of those questions can be avoided after your design certification has been submitted. And so we're seeing a lot more of that type of conversation happen with the regulator and the developer in terms of pre-licensing activity.
Thank you. Okay, back to, while staying on the NRC theme, but back to more of a fuel cycle question. So, as you may or may not know, NRC, I think, is really looking to determine whether they're going to continue their rulemaking on reprocessing. Does the DOE have a position on whether the NRC should continue that rulemaking?
I'm going to be careful here. DOE does not yet have a position.
Good. Okay, that makes sense. Now, in terms of R&D for fuel cycle, I know I've spoken with some people that seeing that sort of the advanced fuel cycle, we saw really growth in the earlier part of the last decade with the advanced fuel cycle initiative, but that funding has sort of tailed off a bit, as I think there's been a little bit more of a focus on reactor systems. Can you maybe just talk a little bit about what you see the future of DOE advanced fuel cycle research look like? How to, what does it look like? What are your plans for the next couple of years?
So especially when we tie this into exploring recycling options, I think it's going to, I predict, if you will, so again, a personal prediction, but that the research and development will continue and actually possibly grow, because we're going to get advanced reactor technologies closer to, up the TRL level, up the technology readiness level scale. And some of those reactor technologies will certainly look at using used fuel in their concepts. And so some more research certainly would need to be done on that. And I envision that would create an uptick in our R&D in fuel cycle space.
Great, thank you. Well, I think we have allotted about 45 minutes. It looks like we may be a few minutes over, although when you're on a Zoom, we're not worried about the next show starting at the top of the hour. So there was one other question, and it's from an anonymous attendee. It says, the real question on everyone's mind is for Craig, what's the shovel for? And I promise, and I swear hand to heart, that it just happened to be where the video screen was, but that was for the facility for rare isotope beams at the Michigan State University. Prior to my joining ANS full time, I was a consultant and worked with MSU for a very long time, from the ideation to the construction stage. So for a swamp creature, being actually able to put a shovel in the ground to build something is always an achievement. But my hope is that as we get through the next few years of nuclear, we might be able to collectively add a few more golden shovels to our collection in this decade. So I want to end just by thanking you, Rita, for participating today. Ojeda and all the students that are working on our series for the next two events, I want to thank you for all of your work. We're sorry, especially for the seniors. I have a senior in high school, but it's the same thing, and the COVID crisis has impacted their lives in a number of ways. And so we're going to try to do our little part here to help all those senior students, at least, you know, a few of them get a couple minutes in the sun as seniors. So for all of you that have joined us, thank you very much. We'll have an archived copy available on ans.org/webinars. I encourage you to check back and keep track of your email as we do more content in the weeks ahead. But in the meantime, be safe, be well, and we will see you again soon. Thank you very much.